what makes Singapore like the pool for you?
Yes, I think what you're saying is interesting. So I think most people don't know this, but Antler 8 years ago, we had like a 2-person office on Cecil Street. And we built this whole thing out of here. And I think we, by far, we are the most active VC in the world now. And so on certain metrics, we are kind of one of the biggest VCs in the world now. And we built it out of Singapore and did it globally, which I think is quite different from most other VCs. So historically, most of the biggest VCs have either come from the US to the rest of the world, or in certain instances, they come from China to the rest of the world. And we are kind of the only one who's really kind of built out of Southeast Asia to the rest of the world, but also probably anywhere outside of the US and China. And we were very excited about that opportunity because I had been in this ecosystem since the early days, right? So when in 2012, sure, there were some great tech companies here, Eraser, for example. But I think in 2012, in the entire Southeast Asia region, $200 million a year was put into venture. Fast forward to 2022, I think it was 33 billion. And I'd lived through a lot of that growth. So we have access to all this tremendous talent and all the ecosystem players there. And so instead of kind of moving to London or moving to San Francisco, where A, you're not in an economy that is growing 6 to 8% per year. B, you don't have that same ecosystem access. C, obviously, what we are doing is quite new in terms of a model, and you benefit from being close to the government. And you can do that in a way in Singapore that you can't do anywhere else. It just became like the natural place to launch. We did consider launching it in all the major ecosystems in the world and set up the HQ there and just move there. But decided that, Singapore was just the best fit because of those 3 reasons. And it's been amazing, right? Now, obviously, we're truly global, but the company is still based here and the headquarters is still here. And it's just a great place to live.
What about Singapore and Southeast Asia as a region? You think are the economic opportunities for innovation are at?
So it's layered, right? So let's take layer 1, Singapore only, right? So I think in Singapore only, just talking about that first, I think the biggest companies being built out of Singapore going forward are going to be true global companies, right? So I think there was a way where the biggest tech companies in Southeast Asia were built for Southeast Asia, but not really for the world. But that's happening now. Like if you look at the biggest successes of the founders we backed out of Singapore, like Aerolo I spoke about earlier, they're truly global companies. And a lot of companies have shown that they can win against the rest of the world from tiny places, like Spotify. What Stockholm is 800,000 million people, and they won against Apple on their core entertainment segment, music. Atlassian out of Sydney won against Microsoft and productivity software. Aerolo out of Singapore won against the biggest telcos and Google on the eSIM marketplace, right? So you can really build these incredible global businesses out of anywhere. And Singapore is one of those places where I think for the next decade, that's going to be the biggest opportunity. So that's kind of layer 1. Then layer 2 is if you think about the region overall, the dynamics is such that if you look at all types of macroeconomic data, we're in the only region which is consistently grown 6 to 8% per year. Sure, there are issues and some places horrible issues that needs to be dealt with, like in Myanmar, and there's been overthrown of governments here and there. There's eccentric leaders and so on, but like throughout that whole thing, you have a region which is very stably growing with a middle class that is growing faster than anywhere else in the world, with a digitalization which is more rapid than anyone else. So this marketplace, as whether you're a B2B company for B2B customers or you're a consumer company for consumers, is just going to be the the most exciting market in the world, right? And then if you go one layer further, kind of outside of Southeast Asia, and you look at the surrounding regions, what like India, 1.4 billion people, is now the most popular country in the world, and the fastest growing kind of large economy. China, you know, on the real basis, is already the biggest economy in the world, leading within a lot of technologies. Like if you look at robotics, drones, this type of manufacturing is like clearly we're all leading, right? It's overtaking the US already. And I think it's one thing that the US really need to kind of look into, right? Because due to regulatory reasons, primarily, they lost out on the whole hardware robotics game so far. Japan, I was just in Japan the other day. We have a great office there. And the Japanese government has decided we want to be the biggest startup hub in the world. And we all know that when the Japanese decides to do something, they tend to be pretty serious about it. So, I think that you're going to see that space growing really, really fast. Korea, right, is like, they're winning in so many segments. They have the heavy industry companies, they're leading technology. And then you also have the entertainment business, the fashion, the skincare. Right, they built these global brands across so many different dimensions, right? So like that's the region we're in, and Singapore is in the middle of this whole thing. So it's like layer one, build global business now in Singapore. Layer two, the most exciting, fastest growing market in the world in Southeast Asia, surrounded by these giants that have tremendous amount of things to offer. So yeah, I'm very excited about the next decades.
Yeah, they call this the Asian century. So hopefully we'll ride on that one, because then Singapore as a keynote connecting all these different economies.
Yeah.
I think there will be huge growth coming out of us and in the region as well.